The Blue Ox. Although little is known in the East, the giant logger Paul Bunyan has been the main character of the most famous folktale in the northern U.S. forest area. His tremendous logging and cultivation ability was transformed into various tall tales and quickly made Paul Bunyan a hero of the pioneering era. Paul Bunyan, the mythic 8-meter-tall logger, is popular with his colleagues and townspeople because of his cheerful and inventive personality, although he was a local folk hero who began to appear to the public in the advertisements of the wood industry. Paul Bunyan soon became the famous national hero. He shows many good qualities that not only loggers, but also Americans admired. This paper focuses on his ecological talents. Ivan Benson, a logger collecting and compiling stories of Paul Bunyan and his colleagues for years, says about Paul Bunyan's origins and symbols as follows. Whether there ever was any such real lumberjack is not certain. It has been said that there was actually a French-Canadian lumberjack with a similar name, but objective evidence is lost in the midst of time and legend, whatever their origin. However, the stories about this mighty man became bigger and more numerous until he became established in American folklore as the culture hero of American pioneering and enterprise, a proverbial symbol of American aggressiveness, bigness, energy, and might. The American fondness for the tall story has found its fulfillment in Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan, Big Talk. 7. In the pioneering era, the harsh environment of the wild must be overcome, and the inner harmony of the community must be achieved. Under these circumstances, Paul Bunyan emerges as an American folk hero due to the characteristics of aggressiveness, bigness, energy, and might. Paul Bunyan became famous because of his physical strength and courage, but he was also a wise and humble human being. In addition, his fellow loggers were not just muscular men, but smart in their brains. Especially Cuthbert, the blacksmith, is mentioned as the most brilliant worker among the many loggers around Paul Bunyan. Bensonite. However, as the stories of Paul Bunyan gradually spread and developed into a legend, his story was more focused on his external size and superhuman power than on his brain and skills as a woodcutter. As noted in the oldest stories existing in print, the Blue Ox was larger than life in physical size, but Paul was not. Paul is described as being clever, strong, and a bit larger than the average lumberjack, but nothing close to the gigantic image that has since evolved. Hardy 109. Actually, Paul Bunyan now was the giant and popular hero built the United States almost single-handedly. In proportion to his enlarged body, his appetite was great. He ate 50 pancakes a day, drank 50 milk, rolled logs, and killed 100 deer at once. He has also dug the Grand Canyon with an axe and made the Rocky Mountains. Paul and Babe also created the land of 1,000 lakes by walking in the snow and leaving behind footprints that later changed into lakes. Paul created the Grand Teton Mountains while playing around with Babe. Mount Hood was also built by Paul's piling rocks on top of his campfire to put it out. Paul is said to have dug the Street, Lawrence River, and the Great Lakes to speed up the delivery of maple syrup for pancakes at his logging camp. Luckily, Paul Bunyan also has a best friend called Babe Blue Ox. Paul Bunyan made a moat to prevent damage caused by Babe accidentally flipping a bucket of water from the Great Lake, which became the Mississippi River. It is believed that the lengthy braggadocio, a major part of American folk literature, began with a contest of pride that tough American pioneers would start when gathered around a fire. Most of these tall tales came from the 1800s when courageous explorers had an exciting adventure on their way to the Wild West. These bragging stories were originally intended to describe a person's ability or explain the natural phenomena people are experiencing. The story of Paul Bunyan was one of the creations by storytellers from the great Lake Midwest of the United States. Among many tall tales by pioneers, Paul Bunyan contains the very essence of the American spirit. The novelty and dignity of the virgin land inspired the pioneers of the West, who were American immigrants of the 19th century. Even today, these lengthy inflated stories continue to instill the wonder of nature and the tremendous effort frontiersmen have made to tame it. The American tall tales describe the indomitable, pioneering spirit that formed the center of pride as American citizens and built the country. The cultivation of American values and patriotism, which has of American history, is also maintained by teaching and tales. As a cultural hero, Paul Bunyan has been absorbed and continues to be described in literature and movies. Two distinct American values were seen to have evolved from early Bunyan stories regarding Paul Bunyan as the last of the frontier demigods. Daniel Hoffman says that Paul Bunyan is the mixture of down east and backwoods. The traditional backwoodsman, when seen in town, was bullen with braggadocio and splenfora. Like the land itself, the backwood characters in the frontier were huge, extravagant, restless, and splendid. Because they didn't have to be humble, they boasted ridiculously about fighting, drinking, making love, swearing. Some of these backwoods characters were also real, historical figures, such as David Crockett, John Henry, and Johnny Appleseed. Other characters, such as Pecos Bill and Paul Bunyan, were born from various combinations between real things and the storyteller's imagination. Later, American mass media continuously reproduced and transformed these frontier tall tales. Undergoing this cultural transformation by media, the gentleman codes, such as manners in front of women and children and respecting nature, were added to the originally tough and gigantic Bunyan stories. Like the land itself, the backwood characters in the frontier were huge, extravagant, restless, and splendid. Because they didn't have to be humble, they boasted ridiculously about fighting, drinking, making love, swearing. Some of these backwoods characters were also real historical figures, such as David Crockett, John Henry, and Johnny Appleseed. Other characters, such as Pecos Bill and Paul Bunyan, were born from various combinations between real things and the storyteller's imagination. Later, American mass media continuously reproduced and transformed these frontier tall tales. Undergoing this cultural transformation by media, the gentleman codes, such as manners in front of women and children and respecting nature, were added to the originally tough and gigantic Bunyan stories. This culturally adapted Paul Bunyan story was often used as an educational model to share the history of frontiers, strengthen American values, and emphasize ecological traditions. As generations passed down, Americans regarded Paul Bunyan as a national hero and tried to find a way of responding and solving nature after his actions, interpreting Paul Bunyan's struggle with nature as the similar efforts of Beowulf in British legend 16. Daniel Hoffman calls Bunyan last of frontier demigods in the subtitle of his book. And Hoffman reminds us of fear of the wilderness as a stimulus to the imagination. 35. According to Hoffman, Paul Bunyan was the self-reflection of the woodsman in the frontier, and his brains match his muscles. So, the comic story of the giant Bunyan made people feel safer by the fact that terror is dwarfed, danger ridiculed entirely away. 30. Paul Bunyan's story, which began to become known in earnest in 1914 and 1916 through advertising brochures published by Red River Lumber Company, a wood company in northwest Pennsylvania, but it was first published in the Detroit News Tribune, July 24, 1910, by James McGillivray. Through the popularization of professional writers in 15 years, Bunyan transformed from a professional folk character into a national legend. Paul was first introduced to the general audience by W. B. Lafayette, an advertiser from Minnesota, was in a series of pamphlets, 1914-44, used to promote Red River Wood Company's products. Britannica, Encyclopedia. Paul Bunyan is now an indispensable part of American culture. Fairy tales, picture books, animated films, video games, and Character dolls, as well as operas, sculptures, paintings, and plays all featured him. There is also Bemudji Natural Park, where Paul Bunyan and Babe were carved side by side. In addition to that, Rowan Memorial Park, called Bunyanland, citizens' festivals are held throughout the United States every year to celebrate Paul Bunyan. On June 8th is Paul Bunyan Day. Hardy says the business industry named after Paul Bunyan is increasing because many tourists feel curious of the famous name. According to the table Hardy presented, the number of businesses with the names of Paul Bunyan and Blue Bull in Bemidji and Brainerd in Minnesota was only 4 in 1947, but the names increased to 18 in 2007, 157. The Blue Ox Bar, Blue Ox Market, Bunyan Trails Road, Paul Bunyan Park, Blue Thunder University baseball team are some of these examples. The fact that the Paul Bunyan Center in Brainerd is nearly 100,000 visitors every year for decades indicates that Paul Bunyan's popularity has not cooled down. Hardy 132. Also, the importance of Paul Bunyan in American culture can be found in that modern spin-off stories in which he became the main characters are steadily being created. For example, in Ivan Benson's book Paul Bunyan and His Men, 1955, Paul Bunyan is not just a hero of the past who was once popular in the old pioneering era, but a cultural hero who can give important answers to modern people suffering from environmental threats such as warming, fine dust, and nuclear pollution. What this paper particularly focuses on is the ecological importance of Paul Bunyan's story. How can Bunyan's story, which is popular with children through picture books, fairy tales, animations, and characters, be effectively used in children's ecological education? What about the affinity of humans and animals as we see in the close relation between Paul Bunyan and Babe? Superhuman's destructive ability of logging and clearing become an ecological model for us to pay attention to. Today, in the story, Paul Bunyan has a showdown with a newly designed logging machine. In some stories, Bunyan wins a logging game against the machine and loses in some stories. But what's important is the challenge of the machine rather than the outcome of the game. Isn't this a grim prediction of the confrontation between humans and current technologies represented by artificial intelligence? And is there any point in which the transcendent view of nature implied in Paul Bunyan's tall tale is combined with ecological theology? Or is Paul Bunyan just a fake hero, born for commercial purposes and catering to the popularity of the public? Paul Bunyan is not ordinary from birth, as are many hero stories. Now I hear that Paul Bunyan was born in Bangor, Maine. It took 5 giant storks to deliver Paul to his parents. His first bed was a lumber wagon pulled by a team of horses. His father had to drive the wagon up to the top of Maine and back whenever he wanted to rock the baby to sleep. As predicted, Bunyan soon becomes the hero of the frontier. However, Paul Bunyan suddenly stops logging and reclamation activities at the end of the story and retreats to nature with his sidekick Babe, just as Hawkeye, the protagonist of Fenimore Cooper's Leatherstocking Tales did after a series of heroic Western pioneering activities. Paul, his men, and Babe logged for many years. But, eventually, Paul began to miss some of the trees that he'd cut down. He thought it might be a good idea to let the trees grow back. By then, he was getting on in years, and so was Babe. He'd logged clear across America. Some say that he logged up into the Arctic Circle as well. I think it's time we find something else to do, Paul told Babe one fine fall evening as they gazed stars. Babe made a grunting sound and nuzzled Paul's neck in response. So Paul packed up his few belongings and retreated to nature. Mason 19. Paul Bunyan, who has continued logging and clearing throughout his life, did not hesitate to destroy nature for survival, but stops logging and clearing as soon as he felt that nature has been destroyed more than necessary. Ironically, he misses the green forest he cut so hard and heads back to the wild nature that no one knows. Paul Bunyan's restrained and balanced behavior highlights Paul Bunyan as a main figure as well as a symbol of restoration. For example, fundraising organization, which was the Major Us Reforestation, named Paul Bunyan Foundation, put forward Paul Bunyan to remind donors of the importance of forests and reforestation. What do young Americans think of Paul Bunyan's character as they read and listen to Paul Bunyan's story through various animation, cartoons, and picture books? The Dean of the Department of Environment at the University of Washington says, as professors and researchers and mentors, our mission is to teach our students about the value of forests and forest products in creating a sustainable society. Most importantly, it's our job to train a workforce that can effectively manage these lands in a manner that simultaneously protects biodiversity and clean water and delivers an enduring supply of renewable building materials. Bunyan's story plays an important role in maintaining the balance between nature and society, but it is especially effective in utilizing ecological education for children or young people who have fewer and fewer opportunities to experience nature, especially children who do not normally encounter nature do not feel as comfortable with nature as their parents' generation, but when exposed to the natural environment, children show signs of anxiety and their senses are blocked, eventually interfering with living a whole life. Paul Bunyan can be an excellent educational solution model for these nature-deficient children in the modern city. The research strongly suggests that time in nature can help many children learn to build confidence in themselves, calm themselves, and focus. Studies also indicate that direct exposure to nature can relieve the symptoms of attention deficit disorders. By comparison, activities indoors, such as watching television or activities outdoors in paved, non-green areas, leave these children functioning worse. Today, children and adults who work and learn in a dominantly digital environment expend enormous energy blocking out many of the human senses in order to focus narrowly on the screen in front of the eyes. That's the very definition of being less alive. And what parent wants his or her child to be less alive? SADI, natural deficiency disorder, is, according to Richard Louv, a human cost of alienation from nature, decreased senses, impaired attention, increased physical and emotional diseases, myopia, increased childhood and adult obesity, and vitamin D deficiency, and other diseases. Experience in the natural world is thus emphasized to provide great advantages to psychological and physical health and learning ability. Children who spend a lot of time in nature can learn to build confidence in themselves, calm themselves, and focus. With the recent pandemic phenomenon of the COVID-19 that hit the entire planet, children are spending less time outdoors, and their health and well-being are in great danger. When children are in a green space, they develop positively in both physical and emotional aspects by reducing stress and recovering concentration quickly. Stories of Paul Bunyan presents how people interact with nature, and children can be reconnected to nature through ecological adventures in Bunyan's stories. Thanks to Paul's reputation as the magnificent logger, children can think again about the importance of forests and easily come up with the ideal vision of life in the future where humans and animals live in harmony, like the solidarity between Bunyan and Babe in the Woods. Often, the quality of the natural experience depends on how direct it is. Are children's hands wet and feet muddy? This type of outdoor activity can help children learn confidence in themselves and make independent decisions. But too many students learn about climate change in the enclosed in computer or environmental education in the curriculum. They have expelled living animals from classrooms, stopped outdoor games, and field trips. Knowing Paul Bunyan is a kind of verbal exploration of the wilderness, but the ecology children experiences in Paul Bunyan's adventures vary. Healing. Robert Greene mentions this positive effect of this psychological wilderness as follows. When consciousness opens fully to wilderness and immerses itself in the natural process, the return is an almost painful experience. In returning to the culture, we plunge ourselves back into the forces that split consciousness from nature or the mind in the first place. In the painful reentry experience, we feel our newly open and connected being congealed into hardened, separate, self-offended selves. 133. If we don't achieve this balance between culture and nature even, though by the psychological wilderness, many children will associate nature with fear and destruction for the rest of their lives. Connecting our children directly or indirectly to nature is a way to cope with the effects of natural loss. Children as nature-deficient kids must not feel anxiety and discomfort in the wilderness. Instead, they must know joy and comfort in nature as the desirable ecology in the future. Paul Bunyan can easily approach children who feel strange about nature as friendly and powerful woodcutters. In particular, the presence of Paul Bunyan's best friend Babe is an important medium for children to love nature and learn the ethics of land and animal, which is more important than anything else in ecological consciousness. Even in solving problems related to sustainable management of resources, Paul Bunyan's balanced behavior between nature and culture, reforestation, and logging, along with the affinity with animal, can be suggested as an important solution to the future for children's environmental education. Lastly, but not least, since Paul Bunyan was an intentional creation of businessmen and advertisers to promote the wood industry, his tall tales are often considered fake tales with economic purposes ahead of true folk tales. The story of Paul Bunyan is also sometimes criticized as a sudden tourism promotion rather than an ecological hero of the wilderness, and the picture of the blue ox with Bunyan just serves as the most well-known postcard ambassador of America's woodlands. The earliest giant statues of Bunyan depicted him as a hulking woodsman, oblivious to the people at his feet, ready to puzzle the ecosystem into pulp. But Paul has changed over the years from a fearsome lumberjack into a grinning forest greeter. His axe is large enough to cleave a redwood with one swing, and that usually rests on the ground. Its days of destruction over. Photo op prop for Paul's many tourist friends, says a cynical critic about Bunyan. Whether his popularity is based on commercial purpose or not, people's interest in Bunyan and Babe is growing, and this trend is not so bad for the ecological aspect. For example, Minnesota's Hackensack even produced a statue of Lucette as Paul Bunyan's girlfriend and established sweetheart days, but belatedly issued proof that Paul Bunyan and Lucette were officially married when it was said that the relationship between the two was premarital relationship. Hardy 142. Through a campaign called Save Babe, Bemidji also launched a massive campaign to repair the statues of Paul Bunyan and Babe of Bemidji. Compared to the somewhat negative view, Paul Bunyan's revived popularity can still be evaluated positively in terms of forest and environmental protection. There are not so many heroes related to the forest, and Paul Bunyan, in particular, was praised as a folk hero because he excelled in reclamation and logging that must be done during the pioneering era. But now it's time for us to take Paul Bunyan's return to nature and his friendship with animals more seriously. We need to listen more carefully to what his silence means in the Arctic Circle. The end. Thank you.